I still hear your voice at night. Make me feel alright. Jump right back into my heart. Cause we could dance the night away. Make me love you through the haze. Ain't no need to be afraid. I still hear your voice at night. Make me feel alright. Jump right back into my heart. Cause we could dance the night away. Make me love you through the haze. Ain't no need to be afraid. Cause I want you bad, I do. You're coming back, cause I still hear your voice at night. Make me feel alright. Jump right back into my life. Give me something else to do than thinking about. Are you thinking about it too? Don't need reason, my reasoning is you. I knew that we were bound to fall apart, but always kept you deep inside my heart. Maybe someday you'll forget the past. I still hear your voice at night. Make me feel alright. Jump right back into my heart. Cause we could dance the night away. Make me love you through the haze. Ain't no need to be afraid. I want you bad, I do. You're coming back, cause I still hear your voice at night. Make me feel alright. Jump right back into my life. I think about you, I really do. I keep on running back, I'm running back to you. I think about you, I really do. I keep on running back, I'm running back to you. Still hear your voice at night, voice at night. I still hear your voice at night, voice at night. I still hear your voice at night. Make me feel alright. Jump right back into my life. I do.
Good evening. That was I Still Hear Your Voice by Linksay and Johnny Joined. It's a dance pop NCS release. You can find that in the description below if you like that kind of stuff. Personally, I do, but no one else, I suppose, is required to do so. Anyway, my name's Grant. I'm the host of River Valley Radio. That's this show, in case you weren't aware. Although I imagine that you would be. I'm also the Prime Minister of New Strathclyde, and I am back with a 20 subscriber special. I know it's not exactly a special because I have done it before for the 10 sub special, which was reading The Lord of the Rings, JRR Tolkien book, or trio of books. And we are just going to pick up exactly where we left off last time. I can't exactly remember, but the story should reveal itself in its own time. So, I'm just going to check something very quickly. And here we go. He wandered in loneliness, weeping a little for the hardness of the world, and he journeyed up the river till he came to a stream that flowed down from the mountains. And he went that way. He caught fish in deep pools with invisible fingers, and ate them raw. One day it was very hot, and as he was bending over a pool, he felt a burning on the back of his head, and a dazzling light from the water pained his wet eyes. He wondered at it, for he'd almost forgotten about the sun. Then, for the last time, he looked up and shook his fish at her. But as he lowered his eyes, he saw far ahead the tops of the misty mountains, out of which the stream came, and he thought suddenly, it would be cool and shady under those mountains. The sun could not watch me there. The roots of those mountains must be roots indeed. There must be great secrets buried there, which have not been discovered since the beginning. So he journeyed by night up into the highlands, and he found a little cave, out of which the dark stream ran, and wormed his way like a maggot into the heart of the hills, and vanished out of all knowledge. The ring went into the shadows with him, and even the Maker, when his power had begun to grow again, could learn nothing of it. Gollum, cried Frodo. Gollum, do you mean that this very Gollum creature that Bilbo met. How loathsome. I think it's a very sad story, said the wizard, and it might have happened to others, even to some hobbits that I have known. I can't believe that Gollum was connected with hobbits, however distantly, said Frodo with some heat. What an abominable notion. It is true all the same, replied Gandalf. About their origins, at any rate, I know more than the hobbits do themselves, or even Bilbo's story suggests the kinship. There was a great deal in the background of their minds and memories that was very similar. They understood one another remarkably well. Very much better than a hobbit would understand, say, a dwarf or an orc, or even an elf. Think of the riddles they both knew, for one thing. Yes, said Frodo. Though other folks besides hobbits ask riddles, and much of the same sort, and hobbits don't cheat. Gollum meant to cheat all the time. He was just trying to put poor Bilbo off his guard, and dare I say it amuse his wickedness to start a game which might end in providing him with an easy victim. But if he lost, would not hurt him. Only too true, I fear, said Gandalf. But there was something else in it, I think which you don't see yet. Even Gollum was not wholly ruined. He had proved tougher than even one of the wise would have guessed, as a hobbit might. There was a little corner of his mind that was still his own, and light came through it, as through a chink in the dark, light out of the past. It was actually pleasant, I think, to hear a kindly voice again, bringing up memories of wind and trees and sun on the grass and such forgotten things. But that, of course, would only make the evil part of him angrier in the end, unless it could be conquered, unless it could be cured. Gandalf sighed. Alas, there is little hope of that for him. Yet not no hope. No, not though he possessed the ring so long. Almost as far back as he can remember, for it was long since he had worn it much in the black darkness. It was seldom needed. Certainly he had never faded. He is thin and tough still, but the thing was eating up his mind, of course, and the torment had become almost unbearable. All the great secrets under the mountain had turned out to be just empty night. There was nothing more to find out, nothing worth doing, only nasty, furtive eating and resentful remembering. He was altogether wretched. He hated the dark, and he hated light more. He hated everything, and the ring most of all. What do you mean? Said Frodo. Surely the ring was his precious, and the only thing he cared for. But if he hated it, why didn't he get rid of it, or go away and leave it? You ought to begin to understand, Frodo, after all you have heard, said Gandalf. He hated it and loved it, as he hated and loved himself. He could not get rid of it. He had no will left in the matter. A ring of power looks after itself, Frodo. It may slip off treacherously, but its keeper never abandons it. At most he plays with the idea of handing it on to someone else's care, and that only at an early stage, when it first begins to grip. But as far as I know, Bilbo alone in history has never gone beyond playing and really done it. He needed all my help too. And even so, he would never have just forsaken it, or cast it aside. It was not Gollum, Frodo, but the ring itself that decided. The ring left him. What? Just in time to meet Bilbo? Said Frodo. Wouldn't an orc have suited it better? It is no laughing matter, said Gandalf. Not for you. It was the strangest event in the whole history of the ring so far. Bilbo's arrival, just at that time, and putting his hand on it, blindly, in the dark. There was more than one power at work, Frodo. The ring was trying to get back to its master. It slipped from Isildur's hand and betrayed him. Then, when a chance came, it caught poor Deagle, and he was murdered. And after that, Gollum. And it devoured him. It could make no further use of him. He was too small and mean. As long as it stayed with him, he would never leave his deep pool again. So now, when its master was awake once more and sending out his dark thought from Muckwood. It abandoned Gollum, only to be picked up by the most unlikely person imaginable, Bilbo from the Shire. Behind it there was something else at work, beyond any design of the ringmaker. I can put it no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and not by its maker, in which case you were also meant to have it. And that may be an encouraging thought. It is not, said Frodo, though I am not sure that I understand you. But how have you learned all this about the ring and about Gollum? Do you really know it all, or are you just guessing still? Gandalf looked at Frodo, and his eyes glinted. I knew much and I've learned much, he answered, but I am not going to give an account of all my doings to you. The history of Elendil and Isildur and the One Ring is known to all the wise. Your ring is shown to be that one ring by the fire writing alone, apart from any other evidence. And when did you discover that? Asked Frodo, interrupting. Just now in this room, of course, answered the wizard sharply. But I expected to find it. I have come back from dark journeys and long search to make that final test. It is the last proof, and all is now only too clear. Making out Gollum's part and fitting it into the gap in the history required some thought. I may have started with guesses about Gollum, but I am not guessing now. I know I have seen him. You've seen Gollum? Exclaimed Frodo in amazement. Yes, the obvious thing to do, of course, if one could. I tried long ago, but I have managed it at last. Then what happened after Bilbo escaped from him? Do you know that? Not so clearly. What I've told you is what Gollum was willing to tell, though not, of course, in the way I have reported it. Gollum is a liar, and you have to sift his words. For instance, he called the ring his birthday present, and he stuck to that. He said it came from his grandmother, who had lots of beautiful things of that kind. A ridiculous story. I have no doubt that Smeagol's grandmother was a matriarch, a great person in her way, but to talk of her possessing many elven rings was absurd. And as for giving them away, it was a lie, but a lie with a grain of truth. The murder of Deagle haunted Gollum, and he had made up a defence repeating it to his precious over and over again as he gnawed bones in the dark until he almost believed it. It was his birthday. Deagle ought to have given the ring to him. It had obviously turned up just so as to be a present. It was his birthday present, and so on and so on. I endured him as long as I could, but the truth was desperately important, and in the end I had to be harsh. I put the fear of fire on him, and wrung the true story out of him bit by bit, together with much snivelling and snarling. He thought he was misunderstood and ill-used, but when he had at last told me his history, as far as the end of the riddle game and Bilbo's escape, he would not say any more, except in dark hints. Some other fear was on him greater than mine. He muttered that he was going to get his own back. People would see if he would stand being kicked, and driven into a hole, and then robbed. Gollum had good friends now, good friends, and very strong. They would help him. Baggins would pay for it. That was his chief thought. He hated Bilbo and cursed his name. What is more, he knew where he came from. But how did you find that out? asked Frodo. Well, as for the name, Bilbo very foolishly told Gollum himself, and after that it would not be difficult to discover his country once Gollum came out. Oh yes, he came out. His longing for the ring proved stronger than his fear of the orcs, or even of the light. After a year or two, he left the mountains. You see, though still bound by desire of it, the ring was no longer devouring him. He began to revive a little. He felt old, terribly old, yet less timid, and he was mortally hungry. Light, light of sun and moon, he still feared and hated, and he always will, I think. But he was cunning. He found he could hide from daylight and moonshine. and make his way swiftly and softly by dead of night with his pale, cold eyes, and catch small, frightened, or unwary things. He grew stronger and bolder with new food and new air. He found his way into Mirkwood, as one would expect. Is that where you found him? Asked Frodo. I saw him there, answered Gandalf, but before that he had wandered far, following Bilbo's trail. It was difficult to learn anything from him for certain, for his talk was constantly interrupted by curses and threats. What had it got in its pockets? He said. It wouldn't say no, precious little cheat. Not a fair question. It cheated first. It did. It broke the rules. We ought to have squeezed it. Yes, precious. And we will, precious. That is a sample of his talk. I don't suppose you want any more. I had weary days of it, but from hints dropped among the snarls, I gathered that his padding feet had taken him to the last of Esgaroth, and even to the streets of Dale, listening secretly and peering. Well, the news of great events went far and wide in Wilderland, and many had heard Bilbo's name, and knew where he had came from. We had made no secret of our return journey to his home in the west. Gollum's sharp ears would soon learn what he wanted. Then why didn't he track Bilbo further? Asked Frodo. Why didn't he come to the Shire? Ah, said Gandalf. Now we come to it. I think Gollum tried to. He set out and came back westward, as far as the Great River. But then he turned aside. He was not daunted by the distance, I am sure. No, something else drew him away. So my friends think, those that hunted him for me. The wood elves tracked him first, an easy task for them, for his trail was still fresh then. Through Mirkwood and back again it led them, though they never caught him. The wood was full of rumour of him, dreadful tales, even among beasts and birds. The woodman said that there was some new terror abroad, a ghost that drank blood. It climbed trees to find nests, it crept into holes to find the young, it slipped through the windows to find cradles. But at the western edge of Mirkwood the trail turned away. It wandered off southwards and passed out of the wood elf's ken, and was lost. And then I made a great mistake. Yes, Frodo, and not at the first, though I fear it may prove the worst. I let the matter be. I let him go. I had much else to think of at that time, and I still trusted the lore of Saruman. Well, that was years ago. I've paid for it since, with many dark and dangerous days. The trail was long cold when I took it up again, after Bilbo left here, and my search would have been in vain, but for the help that I had from a friend, Aragorn, the greatest traveller and huntsman of this age of the world. Together we sought for Gollum down the whole length of Wilderland, without hope and without success, but at last, when I had given up the chase and turned to other paths, Gollum was found. My friend returned out of the great perils, bringing the miserable creature with him. What he had been doing he would not say. He only wept and called us cruel, and many a Gollum in his throat. And when we pressed him, he whined and cringed and rubbed his long hands, licking his fingers as if they pained him, as if he remembered some old torture. But I am afraid there is no possible doubt. He had made a slow, sneaking way, step by step, mile by mile, south, down at last to the land of Mordor. A heavy silence fell on the room. Frodo could hear his heart beating. Even outside, everything seemed still. No sound of Sam's shears could now be heard. Yes, to Mordor, said Gandalf. Alas, Mordor draws all wicked things, and the dark powers bending all its will to gather them. There. The ring of the enemy would leave its mark too, leave him open to the summons, and all folk were whispering then of the new shadow in the south, and its hatred of the west. There were his fine new friends, who would help him in his revenge. Wretched fool. In that land he would learn much, too much for his comfort, and sooner or later, as he lurked in pride on the borders, he would be caught and taken for examination. That was the way of it, I fear. When he was found, he had already been there long, and was on his way back, on some errand of mischief, but that does not matter much now. His worst mischief was done. Yes, alas, through him the enemy had learned that the one has been found again. He knows where Isildur fell, he knows where Gollum found the ring, he knows that it is the great ring, for it gave long life. He knows that it is not one of the three, for they have never been lost, and they endure no evil. He knows that it is not the one of the seven or the nine, for they are accounted for. He knows that this is the one, and he has at last heard, I think, of hobbits and the Shire. The Shire, he may be seeking for it now, if he has not already found out where it lies. Indeed, Frodo, I fear that he may even think that the long unnoticed name of Baggins has become important. But this is terrible, cried Frodo. Far worse than the worst that I can imagine. I imagined from your hints and warnings. Oh, Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do now? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance. Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. Not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end, because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity. I am sorry, said Frodo, but I am frightened. I do not feel any pity for Gollum. You have not seen him, Gandalf broke in. No, and I don't want to, said Frodo. I can't understand you. Do you mean to say that you and the elves have let him live on after all those horrible deeds? Now, at any rate, he is as bad as an orc, and just an enemy. He deserves death. Deserves it, I dare say. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be so too eager to deal out death and judgment. For even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it, and he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end. And when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not least. In any case, we did not kill him. He is very old and very wretched. The Wood Elves have him in prison, but they treat him with such kindness as they can find in their wise hearts. All the same, said Frodo, even if Bilbo cannot kill Gollum, I wish he'd not kept the ring. I wish he'd never found it, and that I'd not got it. Why did you let me keep it? Why didn't you make me throw it away, or destroy it? Let you? Made you? Said the wizard. Haven't you been listening to all that I've said? You're not thinking of what you're saying. But as for throwing it away, that was obviously wrong. These rings have a way of being found. In evil hands, it might have done great evil. Worst of all, it might have fallen into the hands of the enemy. Indeed, it certainly would. For this is the one, and he's exerting all his power to find it, or draw it to himself. Of course, my dear Frodo, it was dangerous for you, and that has troubled me deeply. But there was so much at stake that I had to take some risk, though even when I was far away, there has never been a day when the Shire has not been guarded by watchful eyes. As long as you have never used it, I did not think that the ring would have any lasting effect on you, not for evil, not at any rate for a very long time. And you must remember that 9 years ago, when I last saw you, I still knew little for certain. But why did you not destroy it, as you say should have been done long ago? Cried Frodo. If you'd warned me, or even sent me a message, I would have done away with it. Would you? How would you do that? Have you ever tried? No, but I suppose one could hammer it or melt it. Try, said Gandalf. Try now. Frodo drew the ring out of his pocket again and looked at it. It now appeared plain and smooth, without mark or device that he could see. The gold looked very fair and pure, and Frodo thought how rich and beautiful was its colour, how perfect was its roundness. It was an admirable thing, and altogether precious. When he took it out, he had intended to fling it from him into the very hottest part of the fire, but he found now that the ring could not do so, not without a great struggle. He weighed the ring in his hand, hesitating and forcing himself to remember all that Gandalf had told him, and then with an effort of all will he made a movement, as if to cast it away, but he found that he had put it back in his pocket. Gandalf laughed grimly. You see, already you too, Frodo, cannot easily let it go, nor will to damage it, and I could not make you, except by force which would break your mind. But as for breaking the ring, force is useless. Even if you took it and struck it with a heavy sledgehammer, it would make no dent in it. It cannot be unmade by your hands or by mine. Your small fire, of course, would not melt even ordinary gold. This ring has already passed through it unscathed and unheated. But there is no smith's forge to this shire that could change it at all. Not even the anvils of the furnaces of the dwarfs could do that. It has been said that the dragon fire could melt and consume the rings of power, but there is not now any dragon left on earth in which the old fire is hot enough. Nor was there ever any dragon, not even Ancalagon the Black, who could have harmed the One Ring, the ruling ring, for that was made by Sauron himself. There is only one way to find the cracks of doom in the depths of Orodruin, the Fire Mountain, and cast the ring in there. If you really wish to destroy it, to put it behind the grasp of the enemy forever. I do really wish to destroy it, cried Frodo. Or, well, to have it destroyed. I am not made for perilous quests. I wish I had never seen the ring. Why did it come to me? Why was I chosen? Such questions cannot be answered, said Gandalf. You may be sure that it is not for any merit that others do not possess, not for power or wisdom, at any rate, but you have been chosen, and you must therefore use such strength and heart and wits as you have. But I have so little of any of these things. You are wise and powerful. Will you take the ring? No, cried Gandalf, springing to his feet. With that power I should have power too great and terrible, and over me the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly. His eyes flashed, and his face was lit by the fire within. Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to do heart to my heart is by pity. Pity for weakness, and the desire of strength to do good. Do not tempt me. I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe, unused. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength. I shall have such need of it. Great perils lie before me. He went to the window and drew aside the curtains and the shutters. Sunlight streamed back again into the room. Sam passed along the path outside, whistling. And now, said the wizard, turning back to Frodo, the decision lies with you. But I will always help you. He laid his hands on Frodo's shoulders. I will help you bear this burden, as long as it is yours to bear. But we must do something soon. The enemy is moving. There was a long silence. Gandalf sat down again and puffed at his pipe. As if lost in thought, his eyes seemed closed, but under the lids he was watching Frodo intently. Speaking of smoking the pipe. Excuse me. Frodo gazed fixedly at the red embers on the hearth until they filled all of his vision, and he seemed to be looking down into profound wells of fire. He was thinking of the fabled cracks of doom and the terror of the fiery mountain. "Well," said Gandalf at last, "what are you thinking about? Have you decided what to do?" "No," answered Frodo, coming back to himself out of darkness, and finding to his surprise that it was not dark, that out of the window he could see the sunlit garden. "Or perhaps yes. As far as I understand what you've said, I suppose I must keep the ring and guard it, at least for the present, whatever it may do to me." "Whatever it may do, it will be slow to evil, if you keep it with purpose," said Gandalf. "I hope so," said Frodo. "But I hope that you may find some other better keeper soon. But in the meanwhile, it seems that I am a danger to all that live near me. I cannot keep the ring and stay here. I ought to leave Bag End, leave the Shire, leave everything and go away," he sighed. "I should like to save the Shire if I could, though there have been times when I have thought the inhabitants too stupid and dull for words, and I have felt that an earthquake or an invasion of dragons might be good for them. But I don't feel like that now. I feel that as long as the Shire lies behind, safe and comfortable, I shall find wandering more bearable. I shall know that somewhere there is a firm foothold, even if my feet cannot stand it again. Of course, I have sometimes thought of going away, but I imagined that as a kind of holiday, a series of adventures like Bilbo's or better, ending in peace. But this would mean exile, a fight from danger into danger, drawing it after me. And I suppose I must go along, if I am to do that, and save the Shire. But I feel very small and very uprooted, and well, desperate. The enemy is so strong and terrible." He did not tell Gandalf, but as he was speaking, a great desire to follow Bilbo flamed up in his heart. To follow Bilbo, and even perhaps to find him again. It was so strong that it overcame his fear. He could almost have run out there and then down the road without his hat, as Bilbo had done on a similar morning long ago. "My dear Frodo," exclaimed Gandalf, "hobbits really are amazing creatures. As I have said before, you can learn all that there is to know about their ways in a month, and yet have 100 years they can still surprise you at a pinch." I hardly expected to get such an answer, not even from you. But Bilbo made no mistake in choosing his heir, though he little thought how important it would prove. I am afraid you are right. The ring will not be able to stay hidden in the Shire much longer, and for your own sake, as well as for others, you will have to go, and leave the name of Baggins behind you. That name will not be safe to have outside the Shire, or in the wild. I will give you a travelling name now. When you go, go as Mr. Underhill. But I don't think you need to go alone. Not if you know of anyone you can trust, and who would be willing to go by your side, and that you would be willing to take into unknown perils. But if you look for a companion, be careful in choosing, and be careful of what you say, even to your closest friends. The enemy has many spies and many ways of hearing." Suddenly he stopped as if listening. Frodo became aware that all was very quiet, inside and outside. Gandalf crept up to one side. Hold on. Of the window, and then with a dart he sprang to the sill and thrust a long arm out and downwards. There was a squawk, and up came Sam Gamgee's curly head, hauled by one ear. "Well, well, bless my beard," said Gandalf. "Sam Gamgee, is it? Now, what may you be doing?" "Lord bless you, Mr. Gandalf, sir," said Sam. "Nothing. Leastways, I was just trimming the grass border under the window. If you follow me." He picked up his shields and exhibited them as evidence. "I don't," said Gandalf grimly. "It is some time since I last heard the sound of your shields. How long have you been eavesdropping? Eavesdropping, sir? I don't follow you. Begging your pardon, there ain't no eaves at Bag End, and that's a fact. Don't be a fool. What have you heard? Why did you listen? Gandalf's eyes flashed, and his brows stuck out like bristles. Mr. Frodo, sir! Cried Sam, quaking. Don't let him hurt me, sir. Don't let him turn me into anything unnatural. My old dad would take on, sir. I meant no harm, on my honour, sir. He won't hurt you, said Frodo. Hardly. I'm sorry, my Sam impression is probably not particularly good, so bear with me if you find it funny. And I know that you're probably laughing at home, but you definitely are. Just bear with me because my Sam impression is very, very bad. Moving on. He won't hurt you, said Frodo, hardly able to keep from laughing, although he was himself startled and rather puzzled. He knows as well as I do that you mean no harm, but you just up and answer his questions straight away. Well, sir, said Sam, deterring a little. I heard a deal that I didn't rightly understand about an enemy, and rings and Mr. Bilbo, sir, and dragons and a fiery mountain and elves, sir. I listened because I couldn't help myself, if you know what I mean. Lord bless me, sir, but I do love tales of that sort, and I believe them too. Whatever Ted may say, elves, sir, I would dearly love to see them. Couldn't you take me to see elves, sir, when you go? Suddenly Gandalf laughed. Come inside, he shouted, putting out both arms. He lifted the astonished Sam, shears, grass clippings and all, right through the window and stood him on the floor. Take you to see elves, eh? He said, eyeing Sam closely, but with a smile flickering on his face. So you heard that Mr. Frodo was going away. I did, sir, and that's why I choked, which you've heard seemingly. I tried not to, sir, but it burst out of me. I was so upset. It can't be helped, Sam, said Frodo sadly. He had suddenly realised that flying from the Shire would mean more painful partings than merely saying farewell to the familiar comforts of Bag End. I shall have to go, but and here he looked hard at Sam. If you really care about me, you will keep that dead secret, see? If you don't, if you even breathe a word of what you've heard here, then I hope Gandalf will turn you into a spotted toad and fill the garden full of grass snakes. Sam fell on his knees, trembling. Get up, Sam, said Gandalf. I thought of something better than that. Something to shut your mouth and punish you properly for listening. You shall go away with Mr. Frodo. Me, sir, cried Sam, springing up like a dog invited for a walk. Me, go see elves and all. Hooray! He shouted, and then burst into tears. I'm probably going to stop doing a Sam impression now because it's very hard to do that. I'm trying to do some sort of West Country, but again, I'm not good. Chapter 3. 3 is company. You ought to go quietly, and you ought to go soon, said Gandalf. 2 or 3 weeks had passed, and still Frodo made no sign of getting ready to go. I know, but it's difficult to do both, he objected. If I just vanish like Bilbo, the tale will be all over the Shire in no time. Of course you mustn't vanish, said Gandalf. That wouldn't do at all. I said soon, not instantly. If you can think of any way of slipping out of the Shire without its being generally known, it will be worth a little delay. But you must not delay too long. What about the autumn, or on or after a birthday? Asked Frodo. I think I could probably make some arrangements by then. To tell the truth, he was very reluctant to start, now that it had come to the point. Bag End seemed a little more desirable residence than it had for years, and he wanted to savour as much as he could of his last summer in the Shire. When autumn came, he knew that part, at least of his heart, would think more kindly of journeying, as it always did at that season. He'd indeed privately made up his mind to leave on his 50th birthday, Bilbo's 128th. It seemed somehow the proper day on which to set out and follow him. Following Bilbo was uppermost in his mind, and the one thing that made the thought of leaving bearable. He thought as little as possible about the ring and where it might lead him in the end, but he did not tell all his thoughts to Gandalf. What the wizard guessed was always difficult to tell. He looked at Frodo and smiled. "Very well," he said. "I think that will do, but it must not be any later. I am getting very anxious. In the meanwhile, do take care, and don't let out any hint of where you are going. And see that Sam Gamgee does not talk. If he does, I really shall turn him into a toad. As for where I'm going, said Frodo, it'd be difficult to give that away, for I have no clear idea myself yet." "Don't be absurd," said Gandalf. "I'm not warning you against leaving an address at the post office, but you're leaving the Shire, and that should not be known until you're far away. You must go, or at least set out, either north, south, west, or east, and the direction should certainly not be known. I've been so taken up with the thoughts of leaving Bag End and of saying farewell that I have never even considered the direction," said Frodo. "For where am I to go, and what shall I steer? What is to be my quest? Bilbo went to find a treasure there and back again, but I go to lose one and not return, as far as I can see." "But you cannot see very far," said Gandalf. "Neither can I. Maybe you're tasked to find the cracks of doom, but that quest may be for others. I do not know. At any rate, you're not ready for that long road yet." "No, indeed," said Frodo. "But in the meantime, what course am I to take?" "Towards danger, but not too rashly, nor too straight," answered the wizard. "If you want my advice, make for Rivendell. That journey's that journey should not prove too perilous, though the road is less easy than it was, and it will grow worse as the year fails." "Rivendell," said Frodo. "Very good. I will go east. Then we'll make for Rivendell. I will take Sam to visit the elves. He will be delighted." He spoke lightly, but his heart was moved suddenly with a desire to see the house of Elrond Half-Elven, and breathe the air of that deep valley where many of the fair folk still dwelt in peace. One summer's evening, on an astonishing piece of news reached the ivy bush and green dragon. Giants and other portents on the borders of the Shire were forgotten for more important matters. Mr. Frodo was selling Bag End. Indeed, he had already sold it to the Sackville Bagginses. "For a nice bit too," said some. "At a bargain price," said others. "That's more likely when Mistress Lobelia's the buyer." Otho had died some years before at the ripe but disappointed age of 102. Just why Mr. Frodo was selling the beautiful hole was even more debatable than the price. A few held the theory, supported by the nods and hints of Mr. Baggins himself, that Frodo's money was running out. He was going to leave Hobbiton and live in a quiet way on the proceeds of the sale down in Buckland among his Brandybuck relations, as far from the Sackville Bagginses as may be, some added. But so firmly fixed had the notion of the immeasurable wealth of the Bagginses of Bag End become that most found this hard to believe, harder than any other reason or unreason that their fancy could suggest. To most it suggested a dark and yet unrevealed plot by Gandalf, though he kept himself very quiet and did not go about by day. It was well known that he was hiding up in Bag End, but however a removal might fit in with the designs of his wizardry, there was no doubt about the fact Frodo Baggins was going back to Buckland. Yes, I shall be moving this autumn, he said. Mary Brandybuck is looking out for a nice hole for me, or perhaps a small house, as a matter of fact, with Mary's help. He had already chosen and bought a little house at Crick Hollow, in the country beyond Bucklebury. To all but Sam, he pretended he was going to settle down there permanently. The decision to set out eastwards had suggested the idea to him, for Buckland was on the eastern borders of the Shire, and as he'd lived there in childhood, his going back would at least seem credible. Gandalf stayed in the Shire for over 2 months. Then one evening, at the end of June, soon after Frodo's plan he had finally arranged, he suddenly announced that he was going off again next morning. Only for a short while, I hope, he said. But I'm going down beyond the southern borders to get some news, if I can. I have been idle longer than I should. He spoke lightly, but it seemed to Frodo that he looked rather worried. Has anything happened? He asked. Well, no, but I've heard something that has made me anxious. It needs looking into. If I think it necessary, after all, for you to get off at once, I shall come back immediately, or at least send word. In the meanwhile, stick to your plan, but be more careful than ever, especially of the ring. Let me impress you on this once more. Don't use it. He went off at dawn. I may be back any day, he said. At the very latest, I shall come back for the farewell party. I think, after all, you may need my company on the road. At first, Frodo was a good deal disturbed and wondered often what Gandalf could have heard. But his uneasiness wore off, and in the fine weather he forgot his troubles for a while. The Shire had seldom seen so fair a summer, or so rich an autumn. The trees were laden with apples, honey was dripping into the combs, and the corn was tall and full. Autumn was well under way before Frodo began to worry about Gandalf again. September was passing, and there was still no news of him. The birthday and the removal drew nearer, and still he did not come or send word. Bag End began to be busy. Some of Frodo's friends came to stay with him. With the packing, there was Fredegar Bulger and Folko Boffin, and of course his special friends, Pippin Took and Merry Brandybuck. Between them, they turned the whole place upside down. On September 20th, the two covered carts went off laden to Buckland, conveying the furniture and goods that Frodo had not sold to his new home. By way of the Brandywine Bridge, the next day Frodo became really anxious and kept a constant lookout for Gandalf. Thursday, his birthday morning dawned as fair and clear as it had long ago for Bilbo's great party. Still Gandalf did not appear. In the evening Frodo gave his farewell feast. It was quite small, just a dinner for himself and his 4 helpers, but he was troubled and felt in no mood for it. The thought that he would so soon have to part with his young friends weighed on his heart. He wondered how he would break it to them. The 4 younger hobbits were, however, in high spirits, and the party soon became very cheerful in spite of Gandalf's absence. The dining room was bare except for a table and chairs, but the food was good, and there was good wine. Frodo's wine had not been included in the sale to the Sackville Bagginses. Whatever happens to the rest of my stuff, when the SBs get their claws on it, at any rate, I've found a good home for this, said Frodo, as he drained his glass. It was the last drop of old Wynyards. When they had when they had sung many songs and talked of many things they had done together, they toasted Bilbo's birthday, and they drank his health and Frodo's together according to Frodo's custom. Then they went out for a sniff of air and a glimpse of the stars, and then they went to bed. Frodo's party was over, and Gandalf had not come. The next morning they were busy packing another cart with the remainder of the luggage. Mary took charge of this and drove off with Fatty, that is, Fredegar Bulger. Someone must get there and bomb the house before you arrive, said Mary. Well, see you later. The day after tomorrow, if you don't go to sleep on the way. Folko went home after lunch, but Pippin remained behind. Frodo was restless and anxious, listening in vain for a sound of Gandalf. He decided to wait until nightfall. After that, if Gandalf wanted him urgently, he would go to Crick Hollow, and might even get there first, for Frodo was going on foot. His plan for pleasure, and a last look at the Shire, as much as any other reason, was to walk from Hobbiton to Bucklebury Ferry, taking it fairly easy. I shall get myself a bit of training too, he said, looking at himself in a dusty mirror in the half-empty hall. He had not done any strenuous walking for a long time, and the reflection looked rather flabby, he thought. After lunch, the Sackville Bagginses, Lobelia, and her sandy-haired son, Lotho, turned up, much to Frodo's annoyance. Ours at last, said Lobelia, as she stepped inside. It was not polite, nor strictly true, for the sale of Bag End did not take effect until midnight. But Lobelia can perhaps be forgiven. She has been obliged to wait about 77 years longer for Bag End than she once hoped, and she was now 100 years old. Anyway, she had come to see that nothing had paid for had been carried off, and she wanted the keys. It took a long while to satisfy her, as she brought a complete inventory with her and went right through it. In the end she departed with Lotho and a spare key, and the promise that the other key would be left at the Gamgees in Bagshot Row. She snorted and showed plainly that she thought the Gamgees capable of plundering the whole during the night. Frodo did not offer her any tea. To be fair, I wouldn't have either. Moving on. He took his own tea with Pippin and Sam Gamgee in the kitchen. It had been officially announced that Sam was coming to Buckland to do for Mr. Frodo and look after his bit of garden, an arrangement that was approved by the gaffer, though it did not console him for the prospect of having Lobelia as a neighbour. "Our last meal at Bag End," said Frodo, pushing back his chair. They left the washing up for Lobelia. Pippin and Sam strapped up their 3 packs and piled them in the porch. Pippin went out for a last stroll in the garden. Sam disappeared. The sun went down. Bag End seemed sad and gloomy and dishevelled. Frodo wandered round the familiar rooms and saw the light of the sunset fade in the walls, and shadows creep out of the corners. It grew slowly dark indoors. He went out and walked down to the gate at the bottom of the path, and then on a short way down the hill road. He half expected to see Gandalf come striding up through the dusk. The sky was clear, and the stars were growing bright. "It's going to be a fine night," he said aloud. "That's good for a beginning. I feel like walking. I can't bear any more hanging about. I'm going to start, and Gandalf must follow me." He turned to go back and then stopped, for he heard voices just round the corner by the end of Bagshot Row. One voice was certainly the old gaffer's, the other was strange and somehow unpleasant. He could not make out what it said, but he heard the gaffer's answers, which were rather shrill. The old man seemed put out. "No, Mr. Baggins has gone away. Went this morning, and my Sam went with him. Anyway, all the stuff went. Yes, sold out and gone. I tell you, why? Why is none of my business or yours? Where to? That ain't no secret. You moved to Bucklebury, or some such place. Away down yonder. Yes, it is. A tidy way. I've never been so far myself. They're queer folks in Buckland. No, I can't give a message. Good night to you." Footsteps went away down the hill. Frodo wondered vaguely why the fact that they did not come up the hill seemed a great relief. "I'm sick of questions and curiosity about my doings, I suppose," he thought. "What an inquisitive lot they all are." He'd half a mind to go and ask the gaffer who the inquirer was, but he thought better or worse of it, and turned and walked away back to Bag End. Pippin was sitting on his pack on the porch. Sam was not there. Frodo stepped inside the dark door. "Sam!" he called. "Sam! Time!" "Coming, sir," came the answer from far within, followed soon by Sam himself, wiping his mouth. He'd been saying farewell to the beer barrel and the cellar. "All aboard, Sam," said Frodo. "Yes, sir. I shall. I'll last for a bit now, sir." Frodo shut and locked the round door and gave the key to Sam. "Run down with this to your home, Sam," he said. "Then cut along the row and meet us as quick as you can at the gate in the lane beyond the meadows. We are not going through the village tonight. Too many ears pricking and eyes prying." Sam ran off at full speed. "Well, now we're off at last," said Frodo. They shouldered their packs and took up their sticks and walked round the corner to the west side of Bag End. "Goodbye," said Frodo, looking at the dark blank windows. He waved his hand and then turned around, following Bilbo if he had known it. Hurried after Peregrine down the garden path. They jumped over the low place at the hedge at the bottom and took to the fields, passing into the darkness like a rustle in the grasses. At the bottom of the hill on its western side, they came to the gate opening on the narrow lane. There they halted and adjusted the straps of their packs. Presently Sam appeared, trotting quickly and breathing hard. His heavy pack was hoisted high on his shoulders, and he had put on his head a tall, shapeless felt bag, which he called a hat. In the gloom he looked very much like a dwarf. "I'm sure you've given me all the heaviest stuff," said Frodo. "I pity snails uh, and all that carry their homes on their backs. I could take a lot more yet, sir. My packet is quite light," said Sam, stoutly and untruthfully. "No, you don't, Sam," said Pippin. "It's good for him. He's got nothing except what he ordered us to pack. He's been slack lately, and he'll feel the weight less when he's walked off some of his own." "Be kind to a poor old hobbit," laughed Frodo. "I shall be as thin as a willow wand, I'm sure, but before I get to Buckland. But I was talking nonsense. I suspect you've taken more than your share, and I shall look into it at our next packing, Sam." He picked up his stick again. "Well, we all like walking in the dark," he said, "so let's put some miles behind us before bed." For a short way they followed the lane westwards. Then leaving it they turned left and took quietly to the fields again. They went in single file along hedgerows and the borders of coppices, and night fell dark about them. In their dark cloaks they were as invisible as if they had all magic rings. Since they were all hobbits and were trying to be silent, they made no noise that even hobbits would hear. Even the wild things in the fields and woods hardly noticed their passing. After some time they crossed the water, west of Hobbiton, by a narrow plank bridge. The stream there was no more than a winding black ribbon bordered with leaning alder trees. A mile or two further south they hastily crossed the great road from the Brandywine Bridge, and they were now in the Tookland, and bending south-eastwards they made for the green hill country. As they began to climb its first slopes they looked back and saw the lamps in Hobbiton far off twinkling in the gentle valley of the water. Soon it disappeared in the folds of the darkened land, and was followed by Bywater beside its grey pool. When the light of the last farm was far behind, peeping among the trees, Frodo turned and waved a hand in farewell. "I wonder if I shall ever look down into that valley again," he said quietly. And with that, I think we're going to stop there for the night. If you did tune in all the way, thank you very much. What to do is next weekend, I'm actually looking for my bookmark right now. Next weekend, you can tune in for the next episode of the Balderdash campaign with Ethan of the Sunland and Connor of Libertalia. Again, if you like sort of talk shows like that, I suppose. Um, and yes, thanks very much for joining us. If you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe. If you haven't already followed the X accounts, you can find those in the description below. Thank you so much, and we shall see you next week.